So, talking about the language system of art, I have no absolutes in this because I agree with Goodman and with Saussure that these artworks are language systems, and we could look at them as language systems. And the keys to understanding them are all within the system itself. We can just kind of see that, and once we get it, we get it, and we understand its uniqueness. It's also flexible. That's the one thing we like about art. Is art is a flexible language system that it can have, things can have multiple meanings. And I think one of the things we like is when we look at a work, we can think, um, what can that possibly mean? And then once we get it, we're like, oh, that's fantastic, and that's what that means, and that's what that can possibly be about. And sometimes works of art can have multiple meanings too. I think that's another attribute that we see and we find in works of art. So again, that flexibility. Now, we even in written language, we can have that kind of flexibility. There's some authors who have really played with the language systems. Writers like Shakespeare and Gertrude Stein, E.E. Cummings, they've done that. And they can push language towards poetry where it just becomes symbolic in those ways. Yeah. This is one of my favorite little Gertrude Steins, where Gertrude Stein says, "There is no there." I love that statement. I use it all the time for things, when, and what does it mean? Yeah, there is no there. Um, if we look at that statement, there, what it means is that there's no relevance there. So that she uses there as a thing, um, and and as a measure of that thing. So there is no there, and as a place also. So there is no there. Yeah. Now I could even play with it some more and make a statement like this, which is there is no there, and in there. So that's even just using all these types of there, and playing with the language. So sometimes people who like words will take the words and manipulate them in that way. Yeah, this is the most famous one, and this is Dmitri Borgman. He wrote Beyond Language in 1967, Adventures in Word and Thought. And he used this: buffalo, 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 buffalo. Now, this is the same word over and over and over again, but it's different because some of them are capitalized. So there are three types of buffalo here, three symbols. One is buffalo, which is a bison. It's a cow. Yeah. So the other buffalo is the verb. If I buffalo someone, that's to dupe them, to trick them. Yeah. And then the other buffalo, the capitalized one, is the city, and that's a proper noun. It's a city in New York. Yeah. So what this means is that these bison from Buffalo, the city, are duping and buffaloing other bison from Buffalo who are also duping and buffaloing other bison from Buffalo. Yeah, so it's again just kind of a fantastic restrictive clause type of statement with this. Yeah, really great. Now we know in language systems that the steps are flexible. In choreography, we can change all the steps, but there's probably a point of how much can we change all the words. I sometimes like to use the example, if you've ever written a paper on the computer and then the computer crashed and you lost the document and you went, oh no. And then you had to retype it, and you had to come up with it all from your thoughts again. And If I ask someone, what was it like the second time? Sometimes people say, well, it actually was quicker the second time because you've had the experience of doing it the first time. If I asked you, was it the same, what you wrote? You would say probably no, the words are different. But you might say, you know what, the ultimate meaning of the whole thing is similar, or maybe the same. So sometimes that's a thing that we can get at with language, is that we can have these multiple ways and we can change all the steps, but the piece can still be the same. That happens a lot of times. We encounter that in things like reconstructions. It happens in Shakespeare. Shakespeare, we can still do Hamlet. We can tamper with it. We can change the period. We can change so many things about it. We can even change some of the words. But ultimately, there's a level of critical mass of things that make it Hamlet still. Yeah, and that's I think a kind of fascination with it. I want to talk about abstraction. Now, we probably have been talking about abstractions ever since the first and second function. We've been looking at levels of abstraction and what is abstraction. But I always like to cover abstraction when we cover language, because language is an abstraction. And our ability to use DOG to signify this dog is an abstraction. Yeah, so our mental ability to abstract ideas is important to that. And it's important to art, and it's important, vitally important to language, that we kind of look at that. Richard Diebenkorn said abstraction means literally to draw from or separate. In that sense, every artist is abstract. A realistic or non-objective approach make no difference. The result is what counts. So this idea that everything is abstract means that when we look at Van Gogh's Starry Night, that's an abstraction. It's not the starry night that he saw, it's a step removed. Now you can say, that's, wow, now we're back to what Plato was talking about the bed not being the real bed. So in a sense, it's looking at something and saying, this is the symbol for this other thing. It's looking at this and saying that, put his face up, that is Monday. This is Sunday. This is Sunday. That we see, this becomes an abstraction for that other thing. This face, that tear, that sadness, that's Monday. It's the beginning of the work week, and I gotta work until I get to the happiness that comes on the weekend, and probably, I think we're talking about play, that on the weekend I can play. I'm too busy during the week to do all of that, yeah. So abstraction. If we look at abstraction, I usually like to use this just because this makes complete sense to everyone, and I'll spend a lot of time kind of looking at that. If we look at this picture, all right, so this is a painting I have in process. Yeah, you're looking at the underpainting. So some people will look at that and say, wow, he looks really emaciated. What this happens when you're doing oil painting sometimes, because oil painting is rather translucent. You really draw in a sharp way the lights and the darks, because the next layer is going to go on top and you're going to be able to see through that layer of flesh tones. So sometimes this is called the underpainting in an oil painting here. This is a painting that I've been working on actually I haven't been working on it hard enough. I've just started it, and then I haven't ever picked it up to finish it. And I always use it as a kind of example here in this lecture. So this figure, this male figure, is lying down and clutching his head here. Now, I use this story. Imagine that I showed you this and I said, here's this painting I'm working on. and tell me about it. Now, you can tell me certain things about it, like, someone could say, it's really beautiful. You like the three-dimensionality of it. You like the foreshortening, which means in a photo like this, that the hands are so much bigger than the feet, because you're looking at them closer, yeah? And this has got an interesting foreshortening kind of view of this figure, because you're looking at it from above in this foreshortened way. Yeah, so kind of really pretty well done. You can also talk about things like it looks vulnerable in its nakedness. You can talk about that he's clutching. You can also talk about the fact that you don't know where he is or the situation. You don't know what's put him in this state, that he's just simply in that state. And you can say, I like that because I don't get caught up in the why. I just get caught up in that he is in this really emotional moment of this clutch, this inward contraction. Yeah. If we were looking at that expressive continuum. Yeah. So you look at that things, and someone might say, it's a really beautiful solitude in this image. Okay. So those are several things you could have told me about this painting and this naked male figure. Yeah. Now, imagine this other situation, that suddenly I come into a classroom and I say, hurry, come look, let's go out into the hall. And then there's a figure, there's a male outside in the hall, unclothed, lying down in that same shape, clutching himself. Now, in this situation, we might cover that figure. We might wonder what's happening. And we might ask, is everything all right? It's a different situation. Now, someone could say, well, one is real and one is not real. We're back to Aristotle with, this is a safe place where we can just sit in this solitude or this feeling. Whereas the other situation, we don't know what's happened and we want things to be all right. Yeah. So we look and we see a difference between reality and what is the realm of the make-believe of the art, yeah, of the painting. So those are things that I think are kind of part of what we're dealing with in this expression. So we see this in that second scenario. We're confused. We don't know, and we can't take pleasure out of that. I sometimes say, we're waiting for all the performances in Las Vegas to come back. Eventually someone might even look at this little video I've made and say, oh, all the performances have happened again. But in the show Ka, there's a drowning scene where the nurse does this beautiful tumble while these bubbles come up, and it seems like she's floating to the bottom of the ocean. And, she's just cascading down. It's really a beautiful thing, beautiful music while it happens. And we can sit there and we can enjoy it as part of the story that she's being lost at sea. But we enjoy that moment rather than if we were seeing a real drowning, it would be horrific and it would really be something we could not watch. And it would be really difficult for us. So those are things that becomes kind of a fascination with it. Now, how does this bring us to abstraction? Well, this painting is an abstraction. It's not real life. It's an abstraction of life. So with abstraction, the purpose is to draw us away, to put us to create a symbol for something so that we don't have to see the real thing in that. And it becomes a signifier and part of a language system that we can look at in a safe way. Yeah. All genuine art is therefore abstract. And in the same way that the word dog is not this dog and is not a dog, but it is something that takes the place of it so that we can see it and we can immediately garner it in whatever environment we have. We see abstractions everywhere. In the dance world, imagine if we see a dance and everyone is clothed in the same costume. Now, that's not something that typically happens in everyday life. Yeah, maybe in a couple situations, and we'll look at those in a moment, but you think about that's an abstraction. We do that in a dance because it amplifies the feeling state of those dancers. We're not seeing all their individuality. We're seeing all of them represent the same thing. So they're clothed the same way. Yeah. Now, if we were watching a basketball team or a football game, you would say, oh, they're all clothed. The two teams are clothed similarly. And that is so that we can tell them apart. As we're watching, we can see which team is which. They're not all wearing the exact same thing. They're wearing the different colors, and those colors become part of the thing. Again, a kind of abstraction, yeah. And even things like military or uniforms also allow us to see less individuality and more collectiveness. There's lots of discussions about should kids at school wear school uniforms or not wear school uniforms. And there's pluses and minuses on both sides. But what's fascinating is the reason we make these abstractions and the reasons we move away in those ways. So abstraction, I want to talk about Kandinsky and Mondrian. They're probably two credited with the beginning early abstraction and beginning these levels of abstraction. And what's fascinating to me is that both of them were interested in spirituality and this higher level of reality. And what they said is, in order to get to that, we couldn't take a natural view. We had to take a more abstract view. I thought that was fascinating way of looking at these materials. So, abstraction.